For as long as I can remember, I have helped my family make traditional hulakaka every year for Christmas. However, I never really knew where the spread originated, so I decided to look into my grandfather Robert's heritage because I know that he was the one to teach this recipe to my mother. While researching, I discovered that the bread came overseas with Magda Elizabeth Shanky, who is my grandfather's grandmother, making her my great great grandmother. Born on January 1st, 1878, in Oslo, Norway, Magda had a rough entrance into life. Her mother died at childbirth, causing Magda and her siblings to fall under the care of her grandparents. Magda's father was a fisherman, causing him to be at sea for months at a time, leaving Magda alone. As her father grew older, he retired from the sea and instead operated a tavern and hotel on the waterfront of Oslo. Magda's family had always been of a lower class, so when she fell in love with upper-class citizen Jorgen Shanky, his family did not accept the two's relationship. Jorgen was nearly 12 years older than Magda when the two fell in love. In 1893, Jorgen emigrated to the United States from Norway. 3 years later, in 1896, Jorgen sent money to bring Magda over to America as well. She traveled overseas on the ship the Germanic. The two married in Rock Island, Illinois. Magda passed away in 1952 at the age of 75 due to lung cancer. As I was researching Magda and her side of the family, I ran into a photo of an old sod house. I discovered that this sod house, located in South Dakota, was where my grandfather's mother, Dorothy, was born, so I decided to research her past as well. Dorothy was born into real poverty in a small sod house located in South Dakota. She and her mother were abandoned by Dorothy's father. The two lived on nothing but crushed corn and water. They used dried up cow pies to keep warm in the winter. Their situation only worsened when Dorothy's mother married a second time. They moved so often that Dorothy wound up in the third grade for 4 years. After Dorothy turned 11, she no longer lived at home full time. Instead, she worked at other farms as a laborer. I decided to ask my grandfather if he had any stories he wanted to tell about his mother.
At one point, her parents were going to move like 100 miles away, and they said that she would have to sell her horse in order to come with them. And she refused, instead of selling her horse, she rode the horse that 100 miles away so she could kind of stay with them once in a while, even though she was still working on farms. So she was, from that age, a rather stubborn, persistent young woman.
After this, she lived in a boarding house while working at a Chinese restaurant. Dorothy's original plan was to attend college, but because she couldn't afford it, she instead went to beauty school. During World War II, she aided in the war effort and worked at Wind Charger. She helped create motors and engines to aid the military. After the war, she renewed her beauty license and opened her own beauty salon that ran for 15 years. She ended up moving to Pella, Iowa, where her son, my grandfather, was working at Central College. Her last couple years of life, she suffered from diabetes. In late August, she was driving back from a trip to Oskaloosa, where she had a diabetic blackout and was killed in a car accident. I'm glad I was able to learn more about my past so I can be proud about my future.